Everywhere you turn, the world is loud. News headlines scream with urgency. Social media bombards you with half-truths, and conversations swirl with rumors, conspiracy theories, and the latest hot take. It feels like we are drowning in information, yet starving for wisdom. The harder you try to make sense of it all, the more confusing it becomes. And in that confusion, mistakes happen. Decisions are rushed. Emotions overpower reason. And slowly, without even noticing it, you can find yourself living by patterns of thought that aren't really your own. But here's the truth. Clarity is possible. And it's not about knowing everything or never making mistakes. It's about learning how to think, how to see through the noise, how to separate truth from illusion, and how to recognize the traps your own mind sets for you. When you think clearly, you gain power. Power to choose better, power to resist manipulation, power to live a life that feels steady in a world that feels uncertain. Clear thinking isn't just for scientists or philosophers, it's for everyday life. It's the difference between falling for a scam and spotting the red flag. It's the difference between chasing a superstition and making a rational choice. It's the difference between being swept up in the panic of the crowd and calmly deciding for yourself what matters. And yet, clarity doesn't come naturally. Human beings are wired with quirks, shortcuts, and blind spots. We're prone to superstition, to wishful thinking, to patterns that feel true but aren't. That's why so many irrational beliefs, from Lucky Charms to conspiracy theories, spread so easily. They offer comfort, they offer stories, but they don't always offer truth. To live with clarity, you have to understand not only the world, but also your own mind. This journey is about that understanding. Together, we'll explore why irrationality is so tempting, the most common reasoning errors that trip us up, and the superstitions that refuse to die. We'll look at why people believe in conspiracy theories, how emotions tug at logic, and how to spot the fallacies that push you toward unwise decisions. We'll uncover when irrational beliefs might actually serve us, and when they lead us astray. And most importantly, we'll practice the habits of clear thinkers, habits that make it possible to see the world more accurately, to make better decisions, and to live with confidence even when the world feels uncertain. This isn't about becoming cold, robotic, or detached. It's about becoming aware. It's about developing a mind that can question without collapsing into cynicism, a mind that can balance reason with compassion, and a mind that doesn't confuse noise for knowledge. The world is confusing, yes, but confusion is not permanent. Clarity is a skill, and once you begin practicing it, you start to notice the patterns, the illusions, and the traps. You start to think for yourself. And in a world where everyone is trying to influence your thoughts, that might be the most powerful skill you can ever have. So, let's begin.
Every choice you make begins in your mind. The career you pursue, the relationships you build, the risks you take, the habits you form, all of them are guided by the way you think. But thinking clearly is harder than it sounds. The modern world doesn't reward patience or reason. It rewards speed, reaction, and emotion. Social media thrives on outrage. Headlines compete for attention with shock. Advertisers play on fear of missing out. In this constant storm, clear thinking becomes rare. And yet it is more valuable than ever. When you think clearly, you protect yourself. You see the red flags in a deal that seems too good to be true. You notice when a conspiracy theory relies on half-truths rather than evidence. You realize when your emotions, anger, fear, excitement are pushing you toward a decision you'll later regret. Clarity doesn't make life perfect, but it makes it safer, steadier, and more intentional. Without it, you risk being pulled along by forces you don't control, believing things that aren't true, or living by rules that aren't really your own. History offers endless lessons here. Entire societies have been misled by illusions, false promises, and irrational fears. Financial bubbles form because people convince themselves this time is different. Wars begin because leaders follow pride over reason. On a personal level, people waste years chasing bad investments, unhealthy relationships, or destructive habits because their thinking was clouded. In each case, the absence of clarity carried heavy consequences. But it's not only about avoiding disaster. Clear thinking also opens the path to growth. It allows you to see opportunities where others only see noise. It helps you distinguish between short-term comfort and long-term fulfillment. It makes you resilient, because when confusion swirls around you, you still know how to ground yourself in facts, logic, and perspective. And here's the paradox. Human beings are wired to struggle with clarity. Our brains evolved with shortcuts, biases, and superstitions that once helped us survive, but now often lead us astray. We're drawn to patterns even when none exist. We rely on intuition even when it misleads us. We trust stories over statistics, emotions over evidence. That's why learning to think clearly is not just useful, it's necessary. It's a skill to be built, practiced, and refined. Imagine two people facing the same challenge. One makes choices guided by clarity, the other by confusion. One pauses, questions, looks for evidence, and adjusts calmly. The other reacts to fear, believes rumors, and follows the crowd. Over time, the gap between them becomes enormous. The clear thinker grows stronger, steadier, more in control of their life. The confused thinker falls into frustration, wasted effort, and regret. This is why clarity matters. It shapes the trajectory of your entire life. Every day you face decisions, some small, some enormous, and each one is a chance to practice clear thinking or to surrender to confusion. The more you practice, the sharper your mind becomes and the better equipped you are to navigate a world that will always be complicated, always be noisy, and always be full of illusions. Clarity is not about controlling the world. It's about controlling your mind within it. And once you learn that skill, you carry it everywhere.
If thinking clearly is so powerful, then why don't we all do it? Why do people cling to lucky charms, fall for scams, believe in conspiracy theories, or follow emotional impulses that lead to regret? The answer lies in the architecture of the human brain. Our minds were not designed for clarity, they were designed for survival. And survival, for most of history, meant reacting fast, seeing patterns quickly, and trusting instincts, even when those instincts were flawed. Imagine early humans on the plains. A rustle in the grass might mean the wind, or it might mean a predator. The cost of assuming it's the wind when it's actually a lion could be fatal. So the brain evolved to assume patterns, to jump to conclusions, to treat uncertainty with caution. This quick, instinctive thinking helped our ancestors survive, but it also laid the foundation for irrationality. We see patterns where none exist. We trust gut feelings over evidence. We cling to superstitions because they give us comfort in a chaotic world. Psychologists call this system of fast, intuitive thought heuristics. Heuristics are mental shortcuts, rules of thumb that help us make quick decisions without analyzing every detail. Most of the time they work, but they also create biases. Confirmation bias makes us favor information that agrees with what we already believe. The availability heuristic makes us think something is more likely if it's easier to recall, like fearing plane crashes more than car accidents, even though the latter are far more common. The representativeness heuristic makes us mistake stereotypes for truths. These shortcuts feel natural, but they distort reality. Another reason irrationality thrives is emotion. Our brains are not cold, rational machines. They are emotional engines. Fear makes us exaggerate threats. Desire makes us ignore risks. Anger blinds us to nuance. Hope leads us to gamble on unlikely outcomes. Emotions are not the enemy. They enrich life, guide values, and inspire courage. But when emotions dominate logic, decisions can spiral. That's why people buy into pyramid schemes, gamble away savings, or cling to beliefs that have no evidence, because the emotional pull is stronger than the rational counterweight. Superstition is one of the clearest examples of this. Why do people knock on wood, carry lucky charms, or avoid Friday the 13th? Because superstition gives the illusion of control in an unpredictable world. If you can't control the outcome of an exam or a job interview, carrying a lucky pen feels like you're doing something. It calms anxiety, even if it has no logical effect. From a psychological standpoint, superstition is comforting. From a rational standpoint, it's misleading. And then there's social influence. Human beings are social creatures, wired to follow the group. If everyone in your circle believes something, it's easier to go along than to stand apart. Groupthink gives safety, but it also spreads errors. This is why conspiracy theories grow online. Once you're in a community that reinforces the same beliefs, each voice adds weight, and soon irrational ideas feel like common sense. The psychology of irrationality is not about stupidity. It's about wiring. The smartest minds fall for fallacies because intelligence doesn't erase bias. If anything, it sometimes makes it worse. Smart people can use their intelligence to defend flawed beliefs more convincingly. What saves us is not raw intelligence, but awareness. Once you know how your brain is wired to trick you, you can begin to spot the traps. Understanding the psychology of irrationality is the first step toward clarity. It reminds us that irrationality isn't a flaw of character, it's a universal human condition. We all fall for shortcuts, biases, and superstitions. But when you learn to see them in yourself, you gain the power to question, to pause, and to choose differently. That pause is where clarity begins.
If the mind is prone to irrationality, the next question is, how exactly does it go wrong? What are the patterns of faulty thinking that lead us into confusion? Across psychology and philosophy, researchers have mapped dozens of these errors, but several appear again and again. Recognizing them is like learning to spot cracks in the foundation of your reasoning. Once you can see them, you can avoid stepping into them. The first is confirmation bias. This is the tendency to seek out, notice, and remember information that confirms what we already believe, while ignoring or dismissing what contradicts it. If you believe a certain diet works, you'll remember every success story and overlook every counterexample. If you believe a politician is corrupt, you'll notice every negative headline and skip over any evidence of good work. Confirmation bias makes us prisoners of our beliefs, trapped in echo chambers of our own making. Clear thinking demands we question not only the evidence that supports us, but also the evidence that challenges us. The second is the availability heuristic. This bias makes us judge the likelihood of something based on how easily we can recall an example. If you see a news story about a plane crash, your brain exaggerates the danger of flying, even though the odds of a crash are minuscule compared to car accidents. If you hear about a lottery winner, you might overestimate your own chances of winning. The brain confuses what is vivid with what is likely, which leads to distorted risk assessments. Then there's the gambler's fallacy. This is the mistaken belief that past random events influence future ones. A roulette wheel has landed on red 5 times in a row, so black must be due. A coin has landed heads 6 times, so tails must be next. In truth, each spin or flip is independent, but our brains crave balance, so we imagine patterns where none exist. This fallacy keeps gamblers glued to tables and investors clinging to bad bets. Another trap is the illusion of control.
We believe we have more influence over outcomes than we really do. Knocking on wood, wearing a lucky shirt, or pressing an elevator button multiple times are examples of this illusion. It's comforting to feel in control, but it's dangerous when it blinds us to actual risks or misleads us into superstitions. The sunk cost fallacy is another common error. Once we've invested time, money, or energy into something, we feel compelled to continue, even when it no longer makes sense. We keep watching a bad movie because we've already spent an hour on it. We stay in a failing relationship because we've already invested years. Rationally, only future costs and benefits should matter, but emotionally, sunk costs trap us. Then there's anchoring bias. Our minds latch on to the first piece of information we receive and let it shape everything else. If a car is priced at $30,000 and discounted to $25,000, we think it's a bargain even if the actual value is far lower. Anchors set expectations, and unless we train ourselves to adjust, they guide us more than we realize. These errors, confirmation bias, availability, gambler's fallacy, illusion of control, sunk costs, anchoring, are not signs of stupidity. They are universal. We all fall into them. But here's the liberating truth. Awareness is half the battle. When you can name the error, you can pause before acting on it. You can ask, am I just confirming what I already believe? Am I judging based on memory rather than probability? Am I letting sunk costs keep me stuck? That pause is where clarity slips in. The world may always be confusing, but confusion has patterns. Once you see them, you're no longer their victim. You're their observer, and that shift makes all the difference.
Walk under a ladder, step on a crack, break a mirror. For millions of people, these tiny acts trigger a shiver of unease, even if they claim not to believe in superstition. Why is that? Why do otherwise rational, educated people still avoid Friday the 13th, knock on wood, or cling to Lucky Charms? The answer isn't ignorance, it's psychology. Superstition survives because it meets a deep, universal human need, the need for control in an uncertain world. Life is unpredictable. Exams, job interviews, medical results, even the weather. We cannot guarantee outcomes. This unpredictability creates anxiety. Superstitions give us the illusion of control. If you carry a lucky coin, you feel like you're doing something to influence your fate. If you avoid walking under a ladder, you feel like you've stepped aside misfortune. Rationally, these actions have no effect. Emotionally, they calm us. And for the human brain, calm feels like proof. Superstition also thrives on pattern seeking. The brain is wired to find connections, even where none exist. If something good happens when you wear a certain shirt, the brain links the shirt to the outcome. If something bad happens after breaking a mirror, the brain marks the act as dangerous. Over time, these connections harden into rituals. Once established, they're hard to shake because the cost of belief is small, but the cost of disbelief feels risky. Why tempt fate by ignoring the ritual? Culture amplifies this. Every society has its own superstitions, passed down through stories, jokes, and warnings. In some places, the number 13 is feared. In others, it's the number 4. Rituals before sports games, wedding traditions, holiday taboos, they all carry the weight of superstition. Even when individuals don't fully believe, they participate because culture makes it normal. And once you act the ritual out, the feeling of safety reinforces the belief. But superstition isn't always harmful. It can reduce stress, boost confidence, and even improve performance. Athletes often use rituals, bouncing a ball before serving, wearing the same socks, to create focus. The ritual itself has no magical power, but it gives the mind comfort which frees the body to perform. In this sense, superstition is a psychological tool. The danger comes when superstition replaces rational action. Carrying a lucky charm into an exam is harmless. Refusing medical treatment because of a superstition is not. Superstition reveals something important about the human condition. We are creatures of story. We'd rather live in a world where events have meaning, where rituals matter, than in a world of pure randomness. That's why even in modern scientific societies, superstitions never die. They adapt, they evolve, but they remain, because they meet a need that logic alone cannot. Clear thinking doesn't require eliminating every superstition from your life. It requires recognizing them for what they are, rituals of comfort, not rules of reality. When you knock on wood, you can smile at the habit and move on without letting it guide your choices. Awareness is what matters, because once you know that superstition's power lies not in the world but in your mind, you can decide when to indulge it and when to let it go.
Few forces spread faster or stick harder than a good conspiracy theory. From whispered stories about secret societies to internet forums buzzing about hidden plots, conspiracy thinking has been part of human culture for centuries. But in today's hyper-connected world, it spreads at lightning speed. Why do so many intelligent, ordinary people fall into conspiracies? The answer lies in psychology, not in ignorance. Conspiracy theories thrive because they feed deep human needs, the need for certainty, the need for control, and the need for belonging. At their core, conspiracy theories are stories. They simplify chaos by offering clear villains, hidden explanations, and the comforting sense that nothing is truly random. If something bad happens, an economic crash, a disease outbreak, a shocking tragedy, it feels unbearable to accept it as chance or complexity. The human brain craves order, so conspiracy theories step in with easy answers. It was planned. Someone is pulling the strings. Nothing happens by accident. Even though these explanations lack evidence, they satisfy the craving for certainty. Another reason conspiracy thinking flourishes is that it gives people a sense of control. In an unpredictable world, believing there's a hidden plan, even a sinister one, can feel more comforting than believing events are random. If there's a plot, then at least someone is in charge. And if someone is in charge, perhaps you can resist or fight back. The illusion of control feels safer than the reality of chaos. Belonging also fuels conspiracies. Online communities of believers create powerful in-groups. They share memes, videos, and evidence, reinforcing one another's beliefs. Being part of a conspiracy group gives people identity. We're the ones who see the truth. We're awake. Everyone else is blind. This us versus them mentality strengthens loyalty and makes it harder to leave. Once inside, every challenge is reframed. Evidence against the conspiracy isn't proof it's false. It's proof that the cover-up is working. Conspiracy theories also exploit cognitive biases. Confirmation bias makes people notice only the evidence that supports their theory. The proportionality bias makes us assume big events must have big causes. So a single shooter can't possibly explain a national tragedy. It must be a vast plot. Pattern-seeking instincts make random coincidences look like proof of coordination. Each bias alone distorts thinking. Together, they create a web that feels unbreakable. But here's the danger. Conspiracy thinking erodes trust. It corrodes institutions, relationships, and even personal peace of mind. It makes people suspicious of experts, hostile toward outsiders, and blind to real solutions. Worse, it spreads like wildfire because it offers drama, simplicity, and emotional intensity, things that travel faster than careful reasoning. Clear thinking doesn't mean dismissing every question about power or corruption. Skepticism is healthy. Blind suspicion is not. The difference is evidence. A clear thinker asks, what proof is there? Is it credible? Could there be a simpler explanation? Conspiracies claim to open eyes, but often they close minds. Clear thinkers learn to resist the thrill of the story and instead look for truth, even when truth is less dramatic. The reality is this: the world is complex, messy, and often random. Not every shadow hides a villain. not every tragedy has a mastermind behind it. Sometimes the scariest truth is also the simplest. Chaos exists. And learning to accept that truth, uncomfortable as it is a cornerstone of clarity.
For centuries, people have drawn a line between emotion and reason, as if they were two enemies locked in battle. Philosophers described reason as the cool, steady guide, and emotion as the chaotic force that leads us astray. But the truth is more complicated. Emotion and logic are not rivals, they're partners. The problem arises when one dominates the other. If emotion runs unchecked, it drags us into impulsive decisions. If logic erases emotion, it strips life of meaning and compassion. Clear thinking is not about silencing emotion, it's about understanding it, balancing it, and making decisions with both heart and mind engaged. Consider how many choices in life are shaped by feelings. You buy something not because it's the most rational purchase, but because it excites you. You avoid a risk not because the odds are bad, but because the fear feels overwhelming. You trust someone not because you've run a logical analysis, but because something about them makes you feel safe. These decisions may not be fully rational, but they're human. The problem comes when we mistake the intensity of a feeling for the accuracy of a thought. Anger feels certain. Fear feels urgent. Excitement feels convincing. But feelings, no matter how strong, are not facts. Neuroscience shows why this happens. The emotional parts of the brain, like the amygdala, are older and faster than the rational parts, like the prefrontal cortex. When danger looms, emotions fire instantly: fight, flight, or freeze. Logic takes longer. This was essential for survival in ancient times, but in the modern world, it can betray us. A spike of fear at a headline may lead to panic, even when the risk is tiny. A flash of anger in an argument may push us to say something we'll regret. A rush of excitement in an investment may blind us to the real numbers. So how do you bring logic back into the equation? The first step is awareness. When a decision feels urgent, ask yourself, is this urgency emotional or rational? If it's emotional, pause. Emotions fade with time, facts do not. Waiting even a few hours can shift your perspective. The second step is evidence. Ask, what are the facts here? What do I know for sure? What am I assuming because of how I feel? Writing it down can expose the gap between feeling and fact. But here's the key. Don't dismiss emotion entirely. Emotions carry information. Fear may signal a real risk. Anger may reveal injustice. Joy may highlight what truly matters to you. The goal is not to suppress them, but to interpret them, to treat them as data points, not dictators. Logic can then weigh that emotional data against evidence and probability, creating a balanced decision. Take an example. You're offered a new job. Your excitement says yes immediately. Your fear says stay where you are. Clear thinking doesn't silence either voice. It asks, what's driving my excitement? What's behind my fear? What are the facts about salary, growth, culture, and stability? By examining both sides, you can honor your emotions without being ruled by them. The greatest thinkers of history weren't emotionless. They were guided by passion, but disciplined by reason. That is the model of clear thinking in a confusing world. Feel deeply, but think carefully. Use your heart to know what matters, and your head to choose how to act. When both align, your decisions carry both wisdom and humanity.
It's one thing to understand the psychology of your rationality and the biases that cloud judgment. It's another to apply that knowledge when it counts, in the heat of daily decisions. Because the truth is, clarity isn't just needed in philosophy classrooms or debates. It's needed when you're choosing a career path, investing money, responding to conflict, or even deciding what to believe in the flood of information that hits your screen each day. Rational tools turn abstract ideas into habits you can carry with you everywhere.
The first tool is the pause button. Most bad decisions come from rushing, acting on the heat of fear, desire, or pressure. Pausing, even for a few moments, creates space between impulse and action. That space is where reason lives. Before reacting to a message, before making a purchase, before agreeing to something, take a breath and ask, what's really happening here? What do I know for sure? That one pause can prevent days of regret. The second tool is probability thinking. Instead of asking, will this happen? Ask, how likely is this to happen? This small shift pulls you out of black and white thinking and into reality, where few things are certain, but everything has degrees of likelihood. You don't know for sure if a business idea will succeed, but you can estimate the odds by looking at data, trends, and past examples. You don't know if a plane will crash, but you know the probability is far lower than the risk of driving. Thinking in probabilities cools panic and sharpens judgment. The third tool is the alternative test. When presented with a claim, ask, what's the alternative explanation? If someone says, this product works miracles, ask, could the effect be placebo? Could it be coincidence? Could it be selective reporting? By forcing yourself to think of alternatives, you resist the trap of confirmation bias and open your mind to more realistic possibilities. The fourth tool is cost-benefit clarity. Every choice has costs and benefits, but emotions often blind us to them. Write them down. If you're debating whether to stay in a job, list the pros and cons. If you're deciding on a purchase, list what you gain and what you sacrifice. The act of writing turns vague feelings into visible trade-offs, making the decision clearer. The fifth tool is outside perspective. Imagine you're advising a friend who came to you with your exact problem. What would you tell them? Often, we give others better advice than we give ourselves because we're less tangled in their emotions. Borrowing that perspective helps you escape the grip of your own bias. And finally, the sixth tool is asking for evidence. In a world of misinformation, this may be the most important habit. Whenever you hear a claim, whether it's in an ad, a headline, or a conversation, ask, what evidence supports this? Is it credible? Who benefits if I believe this? Even if you can't find the answer immediately, the act of questioning protects you from blind acceptance. These tools, pausing, thinking in probabilities, testing alternatives, weighing costs and benefits, stepping outside yourself, and asking for evidence are not complicated. They don't require advanced degrees. They require practice. And with practice, they become second nature. Over time, you'll find yourself less swayed by hype, less manipulated by fear, and less paralyzed by confusion. You'll find yourself thinking clearly, even when the world around you isn't.
In a world filled with noise, half-truths, and hidden agendas, skepticism is essential. Without it, you risk believing everything you hear, following every trend, and being misled by every clever story. But like all tools, skepticism can be misused. Too little skepticism makes you gullible. Too much skepticism makes you cynical, distrustful of everything and everyone, locked in a world where nothing is ever true. Clear thinking requires balance, what we might call healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism starts with a simple principle. Ask questions, but don't assume the worst. When you encounter a new claim, resist both extremes, blind belief and automatic dismissal. Instead, pause and ask, what's the source? What evidence supports this? What's the motive behind the claim? These questions don't shut the door on the idea. They open it carefully, testing the hinges before stepping inside. Consider how this plays out in daily life. You see a health supplement advertised with glowing testimonials. A gullible mind believes instantly, buying the product. A cynical mind scoffs, refusing to even consider it. A healthy skeptic asks, are these testimonials verified? Is there scientific research behind it? Who profits if I believe this? That mindset doesn't reject or accept too quickly. It evaluates. Another example. A news story spreads online, claiming a shocking revelation. A gullible reader shares it immediately. A cynic dismisses it outright. All news is fake. A healthy skeptic checks the source, looks for confirmation from multiple outlets, and considers whether the claim fits established evidence. The skeptic stays open but cautious, curious but grounded. Healthy skepticism also means recognizing your own limits. You won't have the time or expertise to evaluate every claim deeply. In those cases, it's wise to rely on credible institutions and experts while still keeping an eye on their transparency and accountability. Blind trust in authority is dangerous, but so is blind rejection of expertise. Healthy skepticism finds the middle path: trust but verify. There's another danger of excessive skepticism. It can isolate you. If you constantly doubt people's intentions, assume every system is corrupt, or believe nothing can be known, you cut yourself off from trust, collaboration, and progress. Cynicism feels safe because it protects you from disappointment. But in truth, it's just another trap, a prison of doubt. Healthy skepticism avoids that trap by remembering that truth, while imperfect, does exist. Evidence matters. Facts matter. Some claims are stronger than others, and your job is to weigh them, not to discard them all. The mark of a clear thinker is not that they believe nothing, but that they believe carefully. They know when to suspend judgment, when to dig deeper, and when to accept with reasonable confidence. This balance keeps you from being a pawn of manipulation, while also keeping you open to learning and connection. Healthy skepticism doesn't shut the world out. It lets the world in, but through a filter, one that screens out deception and distortion while letting through insight and truth. That is how you think clearly in a confusing world, not by rejecting everything, but by learning how to discern.
It's tempting to think that the goal of clear thinking is to strip away every irrational belief, to become purely logical and perfectly rational. But human beings aren't machines, and life isn't lived in spreadsheets. Sometimes irrationality plays a role in giving us comfort, courage, or meaning. The challenge isn't to eliminate every irrational thought. It's to recognize when it helps and when it hinders. Consider superstition in sports. A basketball player might always wear the same shoes during winning streaks. A tennis player might bounce the ball a certain number of times before serving. Rationally, these actions have no influence on the game, but psychologically, they reduce anxiety, create focus, and give the athlete a sense of stability. In this case, irrationality becomes a performance tool. As long as it doesn't replace training or strategy, it adds value. Hope itself is another form of irrationality. Statistically, your chances of achieving massive goals may be small, yet people pursue them anyway, writing books, starting businesses, chasing dreams, because hope tells them it's possible. Without that irrational spark, human achievement would shrink. Hope bends logic, but it also fuels resilience and progress. Even wishful thinking can sometimes protect us. When facing hardship, believing that things will get better may not be grounded in guaranteed evidence, but it can keep you moving forward through pain. Optimism, though irrational in extreme doses, is a survival strategy. It gives strength in situations where cold rationality would say, "Give up." But there's a line. Irrationality helps when it motivates, comforts, or inspires, without replacing necessary action. It becomes harmful when it blinds us to reality, keeps us stuck, or leads us into danger. Believing a lucky charm boosts your confidence. Harmless. Refusing medical treatment because of superstition, dangerous. Hoping for the best in a challenge, useful. Refusing to plan or prepare because things always work out, harmful. This is the balance every clear thinker must find. We don't need to purge every irrational thought. That would strip away much of what makes us human. Instead, we need to recognize irrationality for what it is, a psychological tool, sometimes helpful, sometimes harmful. Used wisely, it can give us courage and creativity. Used blindly, it can trap us in illusion. Clarity comes not from erasing irrationality, but from understanding it, knowing when to lean on it and when to let it go. That awareness transforms irrationality from a chain into a choice.
We've traveled far together, from the roots of irrationality to the illusions of superstition, from the traps of conspiracy thinking to the tug-of-war between emotion and reason, from the daily tools of skepticism to the very habits that define a rational mind. At every step, one truth has stood out. The world is confusing, noisy, and often chaotic, but you are not powerless within it. Clarity is possible, and it begins not by changing the world around you, but by changing the way you meet it. Think about what you've uncovered. You've learned that the human brain, though brilliant, is filled with shortcuts and biases. You've seen how superstition comforts us, even when it misleads us. You've understood why conspiracy theories feel so magnetic, and how emotions, powerful, beautiful, but dangerous when unchecked, can sway even the sharpest mind. You've practiced the tools that bring balance, pausing before you react, thinking in probabilities instead of absolutes, asking for evidence before belief, and recognizing when irrationality is harmless comfort and when it is harmful illusion. And finally, you've built the foundation of a rational mindset, one shaped not by perfection, but by humility, curiosity, and steady awareness. Clear thinking doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. It doesn't mean you'll never feel fear, hope, or doubt. It means you'll notice them when they come, and you'll choose not to be ruled by them. It means you'll live with eyes open, willing to question, willing to pause, willing to say, "I don't know yet," instead of clinging to false certainty. That humility, the willingness to admit uncertainty while still seeking truth, is the heart of clarity. And here's the most empowering part. Clarity is not rare genius, it's practice. Every time you resist confirmation bias, every time you pause before sharing a rumor, every time you look for evidence, you sharpen your mind. Every decision becomes training. Every reflection becomes growth. Over time, what once felt like effort becomes instinct. You begin to live with a sense of steadiness, a quiet confidence that no matter how chaotic the world becomes, you can navigate it. The confusing world doesn't go away. The noise won't stop. The rumors, the biases, the illusions, they'll always be there. But when you think clearly, you rise above them. You see through the fog. You stop being tossed by every wave and instead learn to steer your own course. And when others are swept up in confusion, you become a calm presence, a voice of reason, someone others can trust. So carry this with you. In every conversation, every choice, every moment of doubt, remember the habits you've built here. Question without cynicism. Believe without gullibility. Feel without being blinded. Decide with both heart and mind. That balance, that clarity is your compass. In a confusing world, clear thinking is your greatest strength. And now you have the tools to use it.